They say the city never sleeps. But at 3 in the morning what it does is watch. If you owe something, money, promises, or blood, it knows. And that night Kaio felt it in the weight of the air. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel and comment below where you're watching from now. Because this story may seem about speed, but it's about choices that have no brakes. The engine of the black Dodge purred low, impatiently, like a trapped animal. Kaio kept his hands firmly on the steering wheel, but his heart beat out of rhythm. On the cell phone attached to the dashboard, a message flashed incessantly. Last chance. He knew that number. He knew the tone. He knew the end. 3 months earlier, Kaio still believed that everything had a solution. That it was just a matter of running one more time, winning one more bet, staying up one more night. That's how he got in. It always is. The debt started small. A repair. A favor. A guaranteed ride. Nothing is guaranteed when the money comes too quickly. Now the value no longer fit into numbers. It fit into fear. In the silence of the empty house. In the gaze of his mother, who asked too little. In his younger brother, who believed too much. The meeting point was an abandoned overpass, illuminated only by improvised spotlights. Cars lined up like predators. Men leaning against the doors, cell phones in hand, bets made in seconds. Kaio got out of the car. He felt the stares. "I thought you weren't coming," said Mauro, the man who never raised his voice. "You didn't need to." "I came," Kaio replied. "As always." Mauro smiled slightly. "This ride isn't like the others." Kaio knew. The route crossed the industrial zone, passed through closed streets, crossed an unlit stretch and ended at an old port. Whoever missed a turn wouldn't miss it again. "If you win," Mauro continued, "your debt is over." "And if I lose?" Mauro moved closer, so close that Kaio could smell the expensive perfume mixed with danger. "You keep racing," he said. "But for me, when I tell you to. The way I tell you to." Kaio closed his eyes for a second. He thought of his brother. He thought of his mother. He thought of how many times he had confused courage with despair. "When does it start?" he asked. Mauro pointed to the road. "It started a long time ago." The engine started at the same time. The world narrowed into headlights, held breath, and a single certainty. Kaio was no longer racing for money. He was racing to avoid losing everything he didn't yet know was already at stake. The sound of the starting gun didn't come from a shot. It came from a look. Mauro slowly raised his hand as if controlling time. When he lowered it, the engines roared simultaneously, tearing through the silence of the early morning. Kaio's Dodge shot off, pinning him to the seat, while the city became a blur of broken lights. First corner. Second. Third. He knew that stretch of road better than he knew his own house. Every pothole in the asphalt, every treacherous shadow between the abandoned warehouses. But that night something was wrong. The cars were more aggressive. The drivers more desperate. It was as if everyone was racing for something beyond money. Kaio maintained second position, glued to the bumper of a red Nissan. The radio crackled. "Don't push it now," said Mauro's voice, too calm. "This race is long." "You said that if I won it would be over," Kaio replied without taking his eyes off the track. "I said your debt would be over," Mauro corrected. "I didn't say your life would be free." Kaio's heart pounded. He accelerated. The Nissan tried to block his path. Kaio swerved to the right, passed close to an abandoned truck and took the lead. The crowd roared. Cell phones were raised. Adrenaline masked the fear, for a few seconds. Then came the dark stretch. No lampposts. No margin for error. It was there that Kaio saw something unexpected. A black van parked partially across the road, like a silent warning. He braked instinctively, lost traction for a second, felt the car sway. "What the hell is this?" he shouted into the radio. Silence. The Nissan whizzed past him. Kaio regained control and continued. But something had changed. The race wasn't just a test of skill. It was a message. When they crossed the halfway point, the radio started crackling again. "Some people need to learn before they arrive," said Mauro. "Do you understand this, Kaio?" He understood. It wasn't just about winning. It was about obedience. Kaio thought about giving up. About slowing down. About going off course. But he knew that running away now meant something worse later. With Mauro the reckoning always came. Sooner or later. The final stretch was approaching. The old port appeared in the background, shrouded in mist and rust. Kaio accelerated as much as he could. The Dodge responded as if it also knew that that night would define something irreversible. He crossed the line in second place. There was no applause. Only stares. Mauro was waiting, leaning against the wall. In the black car, hands in his pockets. Second place is still good, he said. For someone who's going to keep racing. You said the debt was over, Kaio retorted, his voice faltering. Morrow approached and spoke softly, almost like advice. The debt is over. Now the commitment begins. Kaio felt his stomach sink. That night, he realized that paying didn't mean leaving. It meant going deeper. Kaio didn't sleep that night. His body was tired, but his mind raced without breaks. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the van blocking the road. It hadn't been a mistake. It had been a warning. Morrow didn't collect afterward. He collected beforehand to ensure that no one forgot who was in charge. His cell phone vibrated at 6 a.m. Short message. No good morning. Today. 11 p.m. Bring the car clean. Kaio sat up slowly in bed. The house was too quiet. The mother had already left for work. His brothers slept in the next room, oblivious to the fact that their lives were being wagered turn after turn. At the bottom of the message was a coordinate. He opened the map and frowned. This doesn't exist, he murmured. The route ended in an unnamed area, outside the urban grid. No official streets. No registered access. It was as if someone had drawn a path where there shouldn't be a road. That night, Kaio arrived at the designated spot. There was no audience. No music. No visible bets. Only 4 cars lined up under the dim light of portable spotlights. The air smelled of dust and fuel. Morrow was there, accompanied by 2 men Kaio had never seen before. This isn't a regular race, Morrow said. That's why it's not on the map. Then what is it? Kaio asked. Morrow smiled. A test. The route ran along dirt roads, makeshift bridges, and a narrow stretch between cliffs. No cell phones. No transmission. No witnesses. If anyone goes off course, Morrow continued, it won't end. Kaio got into the car feeling a different weight on his chest. It wasn't fear of dying. It was fear of surviving and remaining trapped. The start was silent. The car sped forward, raising dust, swallowed by the darkness. Kaio's headlights illuminated only a few meters ahead, as if the world didn't exist beyond that. Each curve was a blind gamble. At a certain point, the car ahead lost control and went off the road. The impact echoed dryly in the void. Kaio braked reflexively. Keep going, Morrow's voice came through the radio. Don't look back. Kaio gripped the steering wheel until his fingers ached. He passed the accident site without knowing if anyone was alive down there. It was there that something broke inside him. It wasn't adrenaline anymore. It was guilt. When they crossed the finish line, only 2 cars remained. Kaio arrived first. Morrow approached slowly, satisfied. Now you understand, he said. It's not about arriving first. It's about going all the way, without asking the price. Kaio turned off the engine. And that guy, he asked. The one who went off the road? Morrow shrugged. He didn't arrive. So he doesn't count. At that moment, Kaio realized the truth that no one said aloud. He wasn't paying a debt. He was being trained not to feel anything anymore. The smell of dust was still in the car when Kaio parked in front of his house. He sat there for a few minutes with the engine off, hands on the steering wheel, trying to remember the last time he drove without feeling his stomach churn. The clock showed almost 3 a.m. He entered in silence. In the hallway he found his brother awake, sitting on the floor, leaning against the wall. You took your time, the boy said without accusation. Just stating a fact. Work, Kaio replied. Always that word. Too empty to sustain so many lies. In his room, Kaio washed his face several times. The cold water didn't erase the image of the car leaving the road, nor the sound. It was never the impact that remained. It was the silence afterward. His cell phone vibrated again. We need to talk. The address was another point off the map. Kaio arrived at an old warehouse with boarded-up windows and a corroded metal gate. Morrow was waiting for him alone, sitting on a table as if that place were just a dimly lit office. You did well, Morrow said. Cold. Efficient. A guy almost died, Kaio replied. Almost, Morrow corrected. And that's important. Morrow threw a folder on the table. Inside photos. Cars. Faces. License plates. People who talked too much. Who thought about leaving, he explained. Some races aren't about winning. They're about silencing. Kaio felt his stomach churn. And me? He asked. What good am I to all this? Morrow stood up. You run well. You don't ask questions. And now you know how much a hesitation costs. He approached. Silence has a price, Kaio. And you've already started paying it. Kaio thought of his brother. his mother, their simple home. He thought of how many people depended on him continuing to breathe. How many more? He asked, defeated. Morrow smiled, satisfied. Until you stop asking that. Leaving the warehouse, Kaio realized something had changed. The city seemed the same, but he wasn't. Every traffic light seemed like a warning. Every shadow a reminder. At home, he found his mother sitting at the table, holding an envelope. This arrived today, she said. There's no return address. Kaio opened it. Inside, a photo of the Dodge. Another of the house. Another of his brother leaving school. Nothing written. It didn't need to be. That night, Kaio understood the value of silence. It was worth everything he loved. And that made him faster. Or more dangerous. Kaio spent the whole day with the feeling of being watched. Not by cameras. By memories. Every corner reminded him of a choice. Every traffic light, a chance to stop that he had never used. The photo of his brother leaving school wouldn't leave his head. It wasn't a direct threat. It was worse. It was a silent reminder of who would pay if he messed up. That night, the meeting was in an underground parking lot, stifled by the smell of oil and damp concrete. The cars formed an irregular circle. Few people. No music. Only tension. Morrow wasn't alone this time. This is Rue, he said, pointing to a thin man with restless eyes. He'll race with you today. Kaio analyzed Rue's car. Too prepared. Too new. What's the route? He asked. Straight line to the ring road, Morrow replied. But there's a condition. Kaio sensed the warning before the words. If Rue falls behind, you slow down. Rue swallowed hard. He's new, Morrow explained. He needs to learn. Learn what? Kaio asked. Morrow smiled like someone teaching a child. That nobody wins alone. The race began without a timer. No audience. Just two cars tearing through the tunnel, their headlights reflecting off the walls like flashes of guilt. Kaio was leading easily. The Dodge responded cleanly, obediently. But Rue couldn't keep up. On the first tighter corner he almost lost control. On the second he lightly bumped the side. Slow down, Morrow ordered on the radio. Kaio lifted off the throttle. His heart screamed to keep going. To finish quickly. But he obeyed. Rue caught up. Thank you, the other's voice trembled. The third corner came too fast. Rue made a mistake. The impact was sharp. Metal against concrete. The car spun and stopped sideways. Kaio braked sharply. Keep going, Morrow said. Now. Kaio looked in the rearview mirror. He saw smoke. He saw the wrecked car. He didn't see Rue get out. He needs help, Kaio replied. He needs to learn, Morrow corrected. And you need to finish. The silence lasted a second. Kaio turned off the radio. He accelerated backward. He stopped beside the wrecked car. Rue was conscious, bleeding, trapped by the seatbelt. I thought you weren't coming back, he said with a crooked smile. Me too, Kaio replied. Sirens began to echo in the distance. Kaio helped Rue out. The two disappeared between the buildings seconds before the police arrived. That night, Kaio crossed an invisible line. Not on the track. Inside himself. And he knew with frightening clarity. Some lines only exist to be crossed once. After that, there is no return. Kaio didn't go home that night. He took Rue to a small health clinic far from the center, where no one asked questions if the payment was in cash. He waited outside, sitting on the curb, listening to his breathing quicken every time a car slowed down at the corner. His cell phone vibrated. Once, twice, 3 times. He didn't answer. On the 4th time he answered. You turned off the radio, Morrow said without raising his voice. That doesn't happen. He was going to die, Kaio replied. People die all the time, Morrow retorted. What can't die is control. Silence. You crossed a line, Morrow continued. And now you need to decide which side of the road you're on. Kaio hung up. It was then that he realized, it wasn't about paying anymore. It was about obeying. And he had failed. Rue left limping, his arm bandaged. They're going to come after you, he said. When someone stops in the middle of the road, they become an obstacle. I know, Kaio replied. In the following hours, Kaio did something he had never done before. He thought before running. He changed his cell phone chip. He hid the car in an old warehouse that a friend owed favors to. He went home only long enough to grab documents and hug his brother too tightly. Are you going on a trip? The boy asked. I'm going to take care of some things, Kaio said. Promise you won't go alone? His brother nodded, confused. That night, Kaio didn't run. He observed. And he understood how Morrow operated. Predictable routes, repeated schedules, disposable drivers. The system worked because everyone was afraid to deviate from the plan. Until someone did. The message arrived close to midnight. Last chance to return. Attachment. A photo of the Dodge being removed from the warehouse. Kaio's heart sank. They had already gone too far. Kaio responded with an address. Not a request. A challenge. The chosen road. It was an elevated stretch of the city, surrounded by concrete and wind. Few entrances. No easy exits. Whoever made a mistake there paid dearly. Headlights appeared on the horizon. 2 cars. Then 3. Morrow was behind in the black car. You're doing this the wrong way, Morrow said on the radio. You don't race against those who build the road. Kaio took a deep breath. Every road ends, he replied. Some sooner than you think. The engines roared. It was no longer a race for money. It was a race for control. And for the first time, Kaio didn't accelerate to escape. He accelerated to confront. The wind cut strongly on the elevated stretch of road, making the car vibrate as if the asphalt were alive. Kaio kept the Dodge steady, his eyes fixed on the center line. Behind him, the headlights multiplied. It was no longer a discreet pursuit. It was an open hunt. The radio crackled. You're surrounded, said Morrow, his voice as cold as ever. Pull over and this will be over painlessly. The wind whipped fiercely across the elevated stretch of road, making the car vibrate as if the asphalt were alive. Kaio kept the Dodge steady, his eyes fixed on the center line. Behind him, the headlights multiplied. It was no longer a discreet pursuit. It was an open hunt. The radio crackled. You're surrounded, said Morrow, his voice as cold as steel. Pull over and this will be over painlessly. Kaio didn't answer. He adjusted the rearview mirror. He counted 3 cars behind him, 1 ahead, closing the gap. Morrow didn't want to win. He wanted to contain. He accelerated. The Dodge roared. The wind whipped fiercely across the elevated stretch of road, making the car vibrate as if the asphalt were alive. Kaio kept the Dodge steady, his eyes fixed on the center line. Behind him, the headlights multiplied. It was no longer a discreet pursuit. It was an open hunt. The radio crackled. You're surrounded, said Morrow, his voice cold as steel. Pull over and this will be over painlessly. Kaio didn't answer. He adjusted his rearview mirror. 3 cars behind. 1 ahead, gradually slowing down. A calculated encirclement. Morrow didn't want speed. He wanted control. Kaio took a deep breath. He floored it. The Dodge responded with a deep, almost furious roar. The car in front tried to close in, but Kaio swerved to the left at the last second, passing within centimeters of the guardrail. Sparks flew. The wind ripped a curse from the back of his throat. You're going to kill yourself, Morrow warned on the radio. Not today, Kaio replied. Someone's going to make a mistake today. He knew that stretch of road better than any of them. The road had an old flaw ignored in the renovations, a curve that leaned too far to the right. Nothing noticeable at low speed, deadly at high speed. Kaio kept the accelerator on. Behind him, one of the cars tried to imitate him. It entered too fast. The mistake wasn't the steering wheel. It was overconfidence. The car lost grip, spun, and crashed hard against the barrier. The impact echoed like a gunshot. The others slowed down instinctively. Kaio didn't. He kept going. Stop now. Morrow shouted on the radio for the first time out of control. You don't know what you're doing. Kaio laughed. A short, almost bitter laugh. I know exactly. Ahead the stretch narrowed. A single lane. No shoulder. Morrow tried to overtake on the right. Kaio closed in. The 2 cars remained side by side for interminable seconds. Kaio saw Morrow through the dark window. Too calm. Too confident. Until now. The Dodge entered the faulty curve first. Morrow got in right behind. The black car slid out from behind. It wasn't a violent crash. It was worse. It was slow. Uncontrollable. The car spun, scraped against the guardrail and stopped sideways, blocking the lane. Kaio braked a few meters ahead. He got out of the car. The wind tugged at his jacket. The city shone in the distance, indifferent. He walked to Morrow's car. Morrow was okay. Scared. For the first time. You crossed all the lines, Morrow said. Kaio looked around. Sirens were already echoing in the distance. No, he replied. I just stopped speeding across yours. Morrow smiled nervously. You think this ends here? Kaio thought of his brother. His mother. The names he never knew. No, he said. But it's starting to end. He went back to the Dodge, got in and started the engine. This time he didn't speed up. He drove away slowly and left Morrow standing in the middle of his own road. Kaio didn't go home that night. He drove aimlessly for almost an hour, keeping his speed low, as if each slow kilometer was a way of apologizing to his own body. The sirens were left behind, but the weight wasn't. What he had done wasn't just confronting Morrow. It was breaking a silent rule. Nobody challenges those in charge and remains invisible. His cell phone vibrated again as the sky began to lighten. It wasn't Morrow. It was Rui. "You've become the talk of the town," he said bluntly. "Everyone's talking about it. Some call you crazy. Others, an example." "Examples die quickly," Kaio replied. Rui was silent for a second. "That's what I'm talking about." Kaio pulled the car over to an empty shoulder. On the other side, the city was waking up as if nothing had happened. "What did you hear?" he asked. "That the system doesn't depend only on Morrow. He was the face. Now they want to prove that nobody is bigger than the road." The call dropped. Kaio took a deep breath. He thought about calling home. He gave up. The less they knew, the better. Hours later, the news arrived the way it always did. Indirect, dirty, calculated. A car set on fire in a distant neighborhood. A well-known driver hospitalized after losing control. A message too clear to be a coincidence. Kaio had become a warning. That night, he went to the warehouse where he had hidden the Dodge. The gate was open. Chains cut. The car still there, intact. Inside, on the passenger seat, an envelope. A single sentence written by hand. "Examples need to be corrected." Kaio sat on the ground, leaning against the tire, feeling the cold concrete pierce his clothes. For the first time since it all began, he felt real fear. Not of dying, but of dragging others down with him. The cell phone rang again. A known number. "If you want this to stop," said the voice on the other end, "you need to finish what you started." "With whom?" Kaio asked. "With all of us." The address came next. An old stretch of disused highway outside the city, no cameras, no neighbors, no easy way out. Kaio looked at the Dodge. It was no longer a tool. It was a symbol. And symbols attract fire. He thought of his brother. Of the silent promise to keep him safe. He thought of how many times he had driven thinking he was in control, when he was only being used. He started the engine. This time not to prove he was faster, but because he understood something too late. When you become an example, you no longer run just for yourself. You run to decide who pays the price. The deactivated highway looked like an open cut in the middle of nowhere. The faded lanes, the weeds encroaching on the asphalt, and the dead lampposts gave the place an air of something forgotten. Exactly the kind of place where people disappear without a trace. Kaio parked the Dodge far from the designated spot and walked the rest of the way, feeling the silence weigh more than any explicit threat. There were 5 cars. The deactivated highway looked like an open cut in the middle of nowhere. The faded lanes, the weeds encroaching on the asphalt, and the dead lampposts gave the place an air of something forgotten. Exactly the kind of road where stories end without witnesses. Kaio parked the Dodge far from the designated spot and walked the rest of the way. Each step echoed too loudly in the silence. There were 5 cars lined up. No familiar faces. No music. No bets announced. Just engines running and doors open as if everyone awaited a verdict. A tall man in a dark jacket approached. "Morrow isn't here," he said. "There are no second chances here." "Then why did you call me?" Kaio asked. The man pointed to the cars. "Because someone needs to disappear today. The race decides who." Kaio felt a chill run down his spine. It wasn't a race to win. It was a race to erase someone from the map. Whoever lost would have no hospital, no police, no news. "And if I don't race?" Kaio asked. The man smiled slightly. "You've been racing ever since you decided to confront the system." Kaio got into the Dodge. His hands gripped the steering wheel, contrasting sharply with the turmoil in his chest. He thought of his brother, his mother, Rui. He thought of how many people had already been silenced in that way. The engines revved simultaneously. The start was brutal. The disused road hid traps, potholes, collapsing sections, fallen signs. There was no clear route. Just follow until the asphalt ended, and beyond that nobody knew what was coming. Kaio stayed in the middle of the group, observing. 2 cars were forcing dangerous overtakes. A third seemed too nervous, making simple mistakes. It was then that Kaio noticed something. There were recent tire marks, swerving. It wasn't a random race. It was a funnel. The route pushed everyone towards a specific point. An old bridge, partially destroyed, hidden by the fog. Whoever arrived there at high speed wouldn't have time to react. "They're going to kill us," Kaio murmured. On the radio, an unknown voice emerged. The road punishes the weak. Kaio turned off the radio. He slowed down. One of the cars sped past, the driver laughing, overconfident. Another followed right behind. Kaio saw when the first car realized too late about the broken bridge. The car flew. The impact echoed distantly, dry, definitive. The others braked in panic. Kaio turned the steering wheel sharply, entering an almost invisible side access, an improvised detour that someone had used before. The Dodge shook but passed. When the dust settled, only 2 cars remained on the safe side. Kaio's. And another. The driver of the other car got out, his hands trembling. This isn't. It was all planned, he said. Kaio left slowly. None of that was true, he replied. Sirens began to blare in the distance. Someone had spoken. Or someone had decided not to disappear. Kaio returned to the car, his heart heavy. He had survived. But now he knew the whole truth. The system doesn't forgive those who escape. It hunts to the end. Kaio didn't go home that night. He knew that every camera, every cell phone forgotten in someone's pocket, every license plate read by chance could be the thread that would lead to him. The race hadn't ended on the bridge. It had only changed form. He drove to an abandoned warehouse, a former clandestine meeting point, now forgotten even by those who lived there. The warehouse was immersed in a heavy, almost offensive silence. Kaio turned off the engine and remained for a few seconds with his hands firmly on the steering wheel, feeling the heat still pulsing under the hood. The car seemed to breathe with him, as if it knew that this night was unlike any other. For years, that sound, engine, gears, acceleration, had been his mother tongue. Now the silence spoke louder. He got out of the car and walked among shadows and rust. Each step echoed memories he had avoided for too long. The first race he won, the easy money, the empty applause, his mother's disappointed look when he showed up injured and lied, saying it had been just an accident. A lie. It had always been a choice. His cell phone vibrated in his pocket. A short message, no sender. They're coming. Last chance. Kaio smiled slightly, a tired smile, different from the arrogant boy who used to speed away without looking back. It wasn't about escaping anymore. It was about finishing something that had started wrong. He opened the trunk and took out a small, almost insignificant flash drive. Inside there were videos, conversations, illegal bets, important faces smiling while lives were put at risk. Enough evidence to bring down many people, including himself. Outside, the distant sound of sirens cut through the air. Kaio took a deep breath. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel the urge to run. He sat on a crate, leaned his back against the cold wall, and closed his eyes for a moment. He thought about everything that could have been different. He thought about the friends who didn't survive the poorly calculated turns. He thought about the road as a cruel metaphor, always offering speed, rarely offering a way back. Lights invaded the warehouse seconds later. Flashlights, shouts, hurried footsteps. Kaio? Hands where we can see. He obeyed without resistance. When he was handcuffed, there was no struggle, no cinematic escape. Just a firm, almost relieved look. As he was led outside, he looked one last time at the car parked in the dark. The machine that had taken him too far. Outside, under flashing red and blue lights, Kaio handed the flash drive to the nearest policeman. The race is over, he said. But the truth needs to begin now. The policeman stared at him for a few seconds, surprised. And in that instant, Kaio knew, losing his freedom was the price. But, for the first time, he was going in the right direction. Dawn arrived slowly. The weak sunlight filtered through the cell bars when Kaio opened his eyes. There was no engine noise, no shouts of bets, no artificial adrenaline that usually filled his mornings. Just silence. A silence different from that of the warehouse, cleaner, more honest. He took a deep breath. For weeks, his name had been in the headlines. Not as a street legend, but as the man who exposed an entire system sustained by money, speed, and death disguised as entertainment. Important people fell. Races were dismantled. Roads became just roads again. And he stayed. At first, the weight was unbearable. Guilt came before sleep. Faces came to mind when the lights went out. Lost friends, destroyed families, lives interrupted by a turn taken too fast. But, little by little, something changed. In prison, Kaio began to help with a simple project. Repairing impounded cars for donation to social institutions. There was no audience, no bets, no applause. Just hands dirty with grease and a silent purpose. It was ironic. For the first time, he worked with cars without competing with anyone. One afternoon, a boy appeared accompanying his father. He must have been about 12 years old. Attentive, curious eyes. He observed Kaio's every move with admiration. "You know a lot," said the boy. "I learned by making mistakes," replied Kaio without raising his eyes. "I want to race when I grow up." Kaio stopped. That phrase had once been his own. He knelt down to be at the boy's level. "Then learn to brake first," he said calmly. "Not every road is made for speeding." The boy seemed confused but nodded. When he was alone again, Kaio smiled for the first time in a long time. Months later, as he went out to the courtyard, he received a letter. It had no return address. Inside, just a phrase cut from a newspaper. "True victory isn't about arriving first, but about knowing when to stop." Kaio carefully folded the paper. He didn't know what the future held. He didn't know when he would be free. But for the first time he knew exactly where he was. And that was enough. Because some races aren't won on the asphalt. They're won when someone finally chooses not to run away. And there, at that dead end of the road, Kaio truly began to move forward.